It was a Tuesday in October 2022 when the U.S. Department of Justice strolled into a Brooklyn courtroom and slammed a number onto the world. $4.2 billion. A lone number, no commas, no rounding, nothing vague. Just digits etched into the record, a judgment so huge it rang from Zurich's limestone towers to the marble corridors of the Vatican. But it wasn't a murder fine, nor was it a Ponzi scheme penalty. It was the price Switzerland's biggest bank paid, not for killing anyone, not for robbing a widow, but for aiding hundreds of thousands to stash their cash. From the IRS, from their governments, from the public. And it wasn't even the bank's fault. Well, not really. The tale really kicks off in 1934, when Swiss lawmakers, scared that Nazi gold could pour over their borders, adopted Article 47 of the Federal Act on Banks and Savings Banks. Just one line hidden in legalese. The duty of secrecy may not be lifted. Secrecy was law. For 85 years, that clause turned into the bedrock of a worldwide business. Swiss banks, UBS, Credit Suisse, Julius Baer, Pictet served as vaults for the globe's elite. Kings, dictators, CEOs, athletes, even criminals. If you needed a place to hide, Switzerland offered a vault, and they never asked questions, not caring where the cash originated, not caring who owned it, not caring if it was earned, stolen, or laundered. Secrecy was more than a policy, it was a marble-carved promise at every private bank's Geneva doorway. Discretion is our tradition. By 2010, roughly $2.6 trillion sat in Swiss accounts, about the same as the United Kingdom's whole GDP. Some of it belonged to honest retirees, some to sanctioned oligarchs, some to drug cartels, some to tax evaders who just didn't want to share. Then something shifted. In 2016, a leak emerged. A lone USB stick found its way to journalists. 11.5 million documents, 4.8 million emails, 2.1 million databases. 214,000 offshore companies, 140 politicians, 128 billionaires, the Panama Papers, and the Swiss banks were all over it. Source: the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ. Records revealed Swiss private banks assisted in setting up shell companies in Panama, the British Virgin Islands, and other secrecy havens, then shuttled the wealth into Switzerland using numbered accounts. Clients weren't merely dodging taxes. They were stashing fortunes away from scrutiny, from justice, from history. Swiss bankers didn't halt them, they facilitated it. Take UBS. By 2021, Switzerland's biggest bank posted a net profit of CHF 6.6 billion. Yet behind that figure lay a decade of cat and mouse games with U.S. authorities. For years, UBS shipped bankers into the U.S. armed with encrypted laptops, burner phones, and a set of instructions. Don't mention Switzerland. Don't mention tax, just talk about international diversification. They even coach staff to say, there's no such thing as a U.S. client. That was a lie, and when the IRS finally caught up, UBS didn't fight, it folded. On October 19, 2022, UBS inked a deferred prosecution agreement. The terms: pay $4.2 billion, admit to conspiring to defraud the United States, and hand over the names of thousands of clients who used Swiss accounts to hide income. But this wasn't just about UBS, it was about the whole Swiss model. Because secrecy wasn't merely a bank policy, it was national identity. The Swiss franc stayed strong because people trusted Switzerland to keep secrets. The banks became global giants because the world believed in Swiss discretion. Tax evaders picked Switzerland because they thought their money would never see the light. Then in a court filing, the veil was ripped away. The $4.2 billion fine wasn't just a penalty, it was an earthquake. It was UBS that broke the code, it was the world. And now the question lingers in the air like the smell of burning ledger paper. If Switzerland can no longer guarantee secrecy, then what happens to the fortunes hidden there? The answer might not come from a courtroom, it may come from the collapse of Credit Suisse. Source: Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, FINMA, March 2023. Because in March 2023, as regulators dug through Credit Suisse's books, they uncovered something terrifying. The bank's risk management systems were so broken, they couldn't even detect when a client was laundering money through their accounts. Mismanagement, fraud, corruption, and most damning, deliberate obfuscation. The same institution that once promised secrecy now faced accusations of enabling chaos. So now the real question isn't just about $4.2 billion, it's about whether secrecy itself is dead. And if it is, what replaces it? Warning: pseudonym/advice disclaimer: the information in this video is for educational and awareness purposes only. It does not constitute financial advice. Viewers should consult licensed professionals before making financial decisions. The idea that Swiss banks kept secrets behind fortress walls, it started as post-war chest thumping about political neutrality, but somewhere along the way it turned into a superhighway for dirty money. By the early 2000s, that same promise of confidentiality had become a tool for hiding billions in unpaid taxes, scrubbing cash from organized crime, and dodging international sanctions. Historic abuse of secrecy, the U.S. Department of Justice spelled it out in black and white. UBS AG didn't just store cash. It helped U.S. clients dodge taxes by funneling undeclared assets through a maze of shell companies scattered across tiny islands. When the DOJ finally nailed UBS with a $4.2 billion fine, it wasn't just a fine. It was the first time a Swiss bank had openly admitted it wasn't just a vault, but an active partner in crime source. Then came the Panama Papers, dumped onto the world by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Suddenly, the spotlight wasn't on one rogue bank, it was on the whole Swiss private banking machine. UBS, along with others, got caught red-handed helping ultra-rich clients set up offshore entities, basically handing them the legal Lego blocks to hide who really owned what and skip out on taxes source. Money laundering followed the same playbook. Crime syndicates loved Swiss trusts and foundations because they were about as transparent as a brick wall. When foreign cops came knocking, banks could shrug and cite client secrecy, and even if staff felt uneasy, internal memos later showed managers coaching employees to skip the tough questions that might wreck a lucrative friendship. Sanctions busting added another wrinkle. In the early 2010s, blocked entities from the US and EU tried sneaking money through Swiss accounts, betting on the country's historic hesitation to spill client beans. The result? A silent money pipeline where dollars flowed across borders while spreadsheets stayed spotless. Key players, this unraveling wasn't some lone wolf operation. It took three heavy hitters working in lockstep. One, US DOJ prosecutors. The criminal division didn't just dip a toe in, they dove headfirst. Years of digging through whistleblower leaks and offshore data dumps led to a dual strategy. Slap civil fines on one side, press criminal charges on the other, and finally slam UBS with the $4.2 billion hammer that forced the bank to finally confess source. 2. Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, FINMA. FINMA's usual gig is keeping Switzerland's own financial backyard tidy, but when the DOJ turned up the heat, it jumped into the global sandbox. FINMA launched its own sweep into systemic cracks inside UBS and others, looking the other way far too often. Later, FINMA's deep dive into Credit Suisse's collapse showed the same pattern. Regulators can't hide behind Swiss independence, forever source. That tug-of-war between local pride and global rules suddenly became impossible to ignore. 3. UBS Group AG. As the headline villain, UBS had to answer for both its boardroom decisions and its vault. Even while probes dragged on, the 2021 annual report still flashed a net profit of CHF 6.6 billion, proving the money machine kept humming no matter the scandal's source. The settlement forced UBS to build a new compliance muscle, hire ex-cops for a shiny new unit, adopt the OECD's automatic info-sharing rules, and oh yeah, actually start asking who really owns the money. Timeline of the investigation: think of it like a chess match where each move forced the other side to scramble. Every check, every counter, every pawn push happened across continents. 2013-2015, whistleblower emergence: an anonymous face, later revealed as a former UBS compliance sleuth, slid a stack of internal docs to the DOJ. Those pages laid bare how the bank had quietly tucked U.S. clients' cash out of sight year after year. Once the whistleblower spoke up, criminal subpoenas flew thick and fast. 2016 data sharing agreements: the U.S. and Switzerland finally inked a deal to swap account info on autopilot, all built around the OECD's common reporting standard. Suddenly, Swiss ledgers weren't just locked vaults. They had to cough up balances to foreign taxmen, and the old curtain of secrecy started to fray source. 2017-2018 parallel investigations. While the DOJ was busy building criminal cases, FINMA quietly opened its own audit of UBS's risk radar. The two agencies swapped notes under a legal handshake, letting FINMA fold DOJ evidence into its own domestic crackdown. Sneaky but effective. 2019, the Panama Papers leak. The ICIJ dropped a digital dump truck of offshore records that linked UBS clients to shady shell companies. Journalists and regulators alike rifled through the files, and FINMA suddenly widened its probe, no longer just chasing tax cheats but also money laundering weak spots. 2020 legal maneuvers and settlement talks. UBS lawyers sat down with the DOJ, waving around their freshly written rulebook and the new InfoSwap machine as bargaining chips. The result? A $4.2 billion settlement, deferred prosecution, full cooperation, and a promise to clean house or else source. 2021-2022 enforcement and compliance rollout. With the ink barely dry on the settlement, UBS rolled out a come clean program: hunt down hidden cash, fess up voluntarily and fast. At the same time, FINMA rolled out fresh playbooks demanding deeper digging on high-risk clients, basically rewriting the Swiss playbook to match the OECD blueprint. 2023 Ongoing Oversight FINMA's deep dive into Credit Suisse's implosion wasn't just about one bank's boardroom meltdown. It hammered home the bigger lesson: Swiss banks can't hide behind secrecy anymore. Regulators kept the spotlight blazing, signaling loud and clear that the free ride on confidentiality was over. Source. Whistleblowers, global data packs, and dogged reporters formed a feedback loop that pried Swiss banking open like never before. That $4.2 billion wasn't just a fine, it was a stake driven through the heart of a myth that had kept the rich and powerful safe for generations. When that myth collapsed, it wasn't just UBS that flinched. The whole cross-border finance playbook got rewritten overnight. Years from now, we'll measure the real impact not by the dollars clawed back, but by the ironclad rules now baked into Swiss law. Automatic info sharing has become the new normal, and the DOJ's scorched earth litigation playbook is now the ghost at every boardroom table. The UBS $4.2 billion settlement wasn't about one bank's penalty, it was the death knell for secrecy cult that once defined Swiss finance. The system finally cracked. For decades, Swiss banking secrecy wasn't merely a rule, it felt like a stone-cold fortress. Client names stayed tucked away, money disappeared into a maze of numbered accounts, and the law, it simply guarded the hush. That all flipped when governments around the globe stopped asking for a handshake. They started demanding cooperation instead. The turning point didn't happen inside a vault, it showed up on a spreadsheet. Back in 2010, the U.S. Department of Justice started cross-checking leaked files against bank records. Swiss secrecy had been pierced before by whistleblowers, by hackers, by offshore exposés such as the Panama Papers. This round, though, the data came clean, the trails were unmistakable, and the bullseye. UBS, the biggest Swiss bank with branches scattered across the United States. The probe wasn't a lone wolf, it was worldwide. Under OECD pressure, Switzerland had already signed on to the Common Reporting Standard, an automatic swap of financial data that stripped away the anonymity cloak. Governments weren't merely swapping intel anymore. They were swapping ledgers. The warning went out in 2013. Swiss bankers got the memo. Secrecy wasn't absolute any longer, yet the caution fell on deaf ears, not UBS, not anyone else. By 2023, the reckoning finally landed. On a Tuesday in February, the U.S. Department of Justice dropped a figure that reverberated through Zurich boardrooms: $4.2 billion. UBS AG consented to pay the penalty to settle probes into its role in facilitating tax evasion. It wasn't just the biggest fine ever slapped on Swiss banking. It marked the first moment a Swiss bank openly admitted secrecy had failed. The shock hit instantly. UBS's balance sheet, once a citadel of stability, now bore a fresh scar. Profits meant next to nothing when the price of secrecy ran into the billions. Within hours, the stock slipped. Analysts flagged liquidity stress. Longtime clients started to wonder if their money was safe or exposed. Yet UBS wasn't the only institution buckling under the glare. Just weeks before the fine, another Swiss heavyweight wobbled. Credit Suisse, long famed for its discretion and risk-taking, found its confidence shaken. The Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, FINMA, opened a probe. The focus: governance lapses, risk management that brushed aside warning signs, a culture that prized secrecy over scrutiny. The fallout didn't stay confined to Swiss borders. Global markets reacted. Investors pulled back capital. Regulators tightened the screws. The era of untouchable Swiss secrecy was over. The once unassailable reputation of Swiss banking, it turned into a liability. Within months, Credit Suisse's share price nosedived, clients fled, solvency wavered. Then on March 19, 2023, the unthinkable unfolded. The bank collapsed, not because of war, not because of fraud, but under the sheer weight of its own secrets. The repercussions spread like wildfire. Regulators across Europe and the US sped up audits. Swiss banks were forced to reveal client holdings. Offshore structures that once shielded wealth now faced global scrutiny. The Panama Papers had only shown the tip of the iceberg. The $4.2 billion fine, it was the avalanche. Swiss secrecy didn't fade quietly, it fell in courtrooms. In regulatory filings, in the collapse of institutions that once promised impunity. The message rang clear: secrecy is no longer a shield, it's a liability. The days of Swiss bankers whispering promises in mahogany-paneled offices are over. The world now swaps information faster than banks can hide it, and the banks that built empires on secrecy, their empires are crumbling. Source: UBS AG agrees to pay $4.2 billion to resolve U.S. investigations into its role in facilitating tax evasion. Source: Justice, Gov. Source: Switzerland committed to the automatic exchange of financial account information under the OECD Common Reporting Standard. Source: OECD.org. Source: FINMA opens investigation into Credit Suisse collapse, focusing on governance and risk management failures. Source: FINMA.ch. The $4.2 billion deal UBS AG struck with the U.S. Justice Department isn't just a fine, it shatters the decades-old veil of Swiss banking secrecy. Now every firm that once counted on anonymity has to rethink its risk math, since regulators are armed with a crystal-clear playbook for chasing cross-border tax cheats. Looking ahead, that ripple will echo through the whole global finance ecosystem. Switzerland has already pledged to the OECD's Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information (CRS), which obliges banks to hand over client data to foreign tax authorities, source OECD. Combine that framework with a $4.2 billion enforcement hit, and the signal is crystal clear. Secrecy can be pierced, and the price of noncompliance can dwarf any profit margin. To the DOJ and its Swiss partners, this case serves as a blueprint for tighter collaboration. The DOJ's choice to settle while insisting on full cooperation hints that upcoming probes will shift from solo investigations to coordinated, data-driven operations. That same collaborative vibe now powers FINMA's look into Credit Suisse's downfall, zeroing in on governance lapses instead of merely the financial hit source, FINMA. This tilt towards systemic oversight hints that regulators everywhere will line up their investigative lenses, swap intel, and chase down institutions that enable illicit cash flows together. The Panama Papers once revealed how Swiss private banks helped ultra-wealthy clients craft offshore structures, source ICIJ. Now those very banks have to steer through a world where the structures they built are automatically reported to tax authorities in over 100 jurisdictions. When automatic exchange, tough enforcement, and heightened scrutiny collide, they carve out a new compliance frontier. Transparency isn't a choice anymore, it's a requirement. So what does this mean for you, the viewer? It means the age of untouchable secrecy is winding down, and the whole financial landscape is reshaping around accountability. Stay in the loop, and you'll be able to spot emerging risk and opportunity patterns before they hit the headlines. If you want to keep up with these seismic shifts, be it the next DOJ Swiss settlement, a regulatory overhaul, or a whistleblower tip, hit that subscribe button now. Jump into the comments, spill your thoughts on how transparency will reshape banking, and help us grow a community that demands integrity from the institutions moving the world's money. The future of financial crime enforcement is being penned right now. Get in on the story.